Welcome to another edition of the Mailtime Podcast. I'm joined today by author and doctor Tuvia Book, who's been serving in Gaza as a reservist with the IDF for how many hundreds of days?
Hundreds. Even I lost count.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I want to get straight to it. Current FIDF CEO Nadav Padan, Major General in Reserve, has said that essentially soldiers that are asking for upgraded equipment are like spoiled college students that have a car and are looking for a new car. So are you a spoiled college student?
Hardly. University was a long time ago for me, and the reality is that after 3 degrees in university, is when we first went to the army, I literally joined up on the 7th of October. The next day I was already in the army on the 8th. When they opened our warehouses we were in what's called in Hebrew Palma. You can see on my shirt, Palma, which means Plugat Lechima Mechavit Rufuit, which is Combat Medical Extraction Unit. Went inside for many hundreds of days. And the reality is the exact opposite. These are highly dedicated troops, highly motivated, highly qualified troops. When we first went in on the 8th of October and opened our warehouses, if it wouldn't have been so sad, it might have been funny. We were met with a wall of equipment that was so antiquated and so old and so irrelevant that it was almost, I don't want to sound too dramatic, but it's like a sick joke. We literally had helmets inside. It said 1973. The Yom Kippur War, 50 years earlier, which were heavy and not bulletproof. We went to the section where those flak jackets, they were written in English, still in their plastic wrapping. Get this one, yeah, I'm glad you're sitting down. From the Vietnam War era, literally from the late 1960s. Never mind not stopping flak. They wouldn't even stop someone if you threw a rock at them. We were expected with the substandard equipment to go into a combat zone whilst being fired at. Don't even get me started on no ceramic plates, no Kevlar helmets, nothing. Hardly what one would call spoiled college kids, more a life-saving team going to save lives and putting their own lives in danger.
And in fact, I don't think that the fact that you had terrible equipment would actually stop many people because you're so dedicated to the mission, which is kind of the whole thing that was particularly disturbing to people like myself, because it wasn't as if you're saying, I won't go and help. You're saying, I want to go help. I want to risk my life. I just need the proper equipment. And I came across something from Udi Adam, who was the Director General of the Minister of Defense up until 2020. And he said, and this is a real quote, "Equipment is equipment." He says, "I didn't get the impression that it was lacking." He said, "I know the system. I was also the Director General of the Ministry of Defense. There is a shortage of equipment that people want. One received an old vest, so he says he doesn't have one, but there really is no shortage." So how do you respond to people who are in positions of power or were in positions of power and are taken seriously in the media and are actively spreading misinformation or spread misinformation at the beginning of the war?
Well, there's 2 ways to respond. One is to actually invite them to the unit and show them what the reality on the ground is. And I wrote an article for an op-ed for the Times of Israel right at the beginning of the war saying, why don't we have ceramic plates? And I told them exactly what the situation was. And you're right 100% about the serving soldiers. Like, we're motivated enough to leave our families, leave our studies, leave our work, leave everything behind to go and serve. But there's 2 issues. One, if you have substandard equipment, you're putting your life in danger. 2 is that no one's taking you seriously. So if you come up to a wounded soldier and you look like you're an extra in some Wild West movie, and no one's going to take you seriously. It doesn't matter if you've got 3 medical degrees and you're like a top subspecialist surgeon. You come dressed like you're from the Falangot, no one's going to take you seriously. And you yourself don't have confidence either. It's not a question of, oh, we need to look good just to show off. And, it's literally life and death. You're walking
So the former,
we're getting fired at, and the ceramic plate can literally stop a bullet. It'll break your rib, it'll still stop a plate. If you're not having a ceramic plate, it's a difference between life and death. And just to conclude, I would say many of these people make these absurd accusations, have either never been in combat themselves, or it's been so many decades since they forgot what the reality is. And that's a kind judgment.
I was obviously fighting this fight for now 20 months, and I've done so having not served in combat, but kind of just understanding basic science in the sense that if someone were to have a Little League game here where you have youth baseball and they would put a young boy or a young girl in a helmet from 1978, you'd probably call Child Protective Services for having not properly protected this child in 2025 because you're giving them substandard equipment. So by the same token, it's not as if these things just work infinitely. How high up the chain did this go? Did you try to bring this up to your brigade commander and going up all the way to the top? Where was the disconnect between what was happening on the ground and the people at the top?
So first of all, because you did mention helmets, part of what we do is we follow up on some of the patients who we evacuate. So I went to a place called Bet Halochem, which is where they do the rehab for wounded soldiers. And one of the soldiers who we'd extracted, he showed me a picture of his helmet, and you actually saw how the bullet grazed the outside of the helmet, made indented. This is a Kevlar helmet. These are the reinforced battle helmets, the modern ones. And it literally saved his life. Unfortunately, the same device that grazed the thing, and the IDF blew up part of his arm, because that's the part that wasn't protected. But the head and the main torso, which had ceramic plates and a modern vest, that's why he was there talking to me in the first place. So it's not just to show off, it is literally life and death. Now, to answer your question as far how far it went, I spoke to my brigade commander, battalion commander, a platoon commander. I went like all the way up from platoon all the way up to battalion commander, and they were aware of it, and they were desperately seeking funding. The army was saying, well, you got a helmet and you got a flak jacket, so shut up, basically. I myself, in my naivety, actually called the FIDF at the beginning of the war and introduced myself, told them what unit I'm serving and that we need equipment, and I was met with absolute apathy. They literally put the phone down on me and said, who are you? Why are you even calling us? This is not the way this works. Click. So that is when I sprung into action, and you amongst many other people. All our unit now is equipped like Sayeret Matkal right now, but it's all through private donations. You should
So
look
what
at
percent of the gear that you have was donated?
everything.
Everything. So 100%. Right.
Except for our guns. Our guns are
Except for the
military
guns,
issue.
right.
And even then we have donated straps, because the straps they gave us were shocking. And some people, like myself, have bought privately sights, scopes for the guns, because they weren't provided by the military as well. Just the gun itself. I literally, every single thing that I wear is donated. Even my uniform. Everything. Even my boots. Everything. I don't have a stitch of clothing that's not donated, or equipment. My vest, my ceramic plate, my helmet, my tactical gloves, my boots, all donated. One walking donation advert.
And I just want to clarify for those that are listening are going to say, oh, negativity, or why are we focusing on this? Very briefly, I can at least speak to why I'm focusing on it. I focus on it because, first of all, there's a contract between the citizens of Israel and the government in which people are conscripted, unless you're Haredi, but we'll deal with that a different time. But for the most part, you're conscripted. Yes.
Yeah.
So for the most part, you're conscripted. And I think that as taxpayers and people that are willing to risk their lives, the basic thing, the least you can do is try to give them the best chance of surviving and returning home to their family. Second of all,
Correct.
there's no excuse. I'll give people a pass for part of the lack of equipment on October 7th. If you would have gone to the head of the army and said, is there a better chance of Jeffrey Epstein emerging from an alien spaceship and invading the country, or Hamas invading the country, he probably would have said there's a better chance of Jeffrey Epstein jumping out of a plane or a UFO. And there's therefore not going to be enough equipment because they never anticipated it. But what I do not give a pass for is the act of misinformation and the aftermath, because you're prolonging this issue that really didn't have to be quite as bad as it was. Because if you just dealt with it honestly, people could contribute and people could help, and people still did help. But I know, as someone who was on the sidelines trying to help, I had to spend many months trying to convince people that this wasn't fake news, because there was so much trying to tamper it down by the powers that be and the organizations. So did you encounter that? Right. So did you encounter that when you were...
I read the press report saying every soldier has what they need, which on paper is correct. Every soldier has a helmet and a flak jacket, right? So you can do your little tick, your little check. Helmet distributed, check. Flak jacket, check. What they didn't say is the level of the equipment was decades behind what was actually necessary for a frontline operating unit in enemy territory. And that's the part that was always missing. It's almost as if they were embarrassed. I can tell you right now that billions of dollars of equipment currently being worn by IDF soldiers has been donated by generous Jews and friends of Israel from abroad. Billions, not tens, not millions, billions. And one of the people who people welcome to look up is a guy called Dr. Daniel Polisar, who has raised tens of millions of dollars worth of equipment because he realizes that we're basically being, the word is gaslit. It's not
Correct.
true.
So
Yes.
I know Dr. Daniel Polisar very well. We've collaborated on a lot of things.
They call it Gaza lit, by the way, instead of gaslit.
Gaza lit, right. So I'll say this. He's taken a more parv approach when it comes to being outspoken. I'm happy to take the more aggressive approach. I think that there's a very solid case for criminal negligence when it comes to people in logistics who put people on the front lines with substandard equipment and the unfortunate results that did happen for some people, unfortunately. Again, I'm not asking my friend Dr. Daniel Polisar to say that. I'm happy to do the job and say that. But yes, there are so many people out there that really stepped up. Even if you just look at drones, look at the...
I can't answer the drones because our particular unit doesn't need them. I can answer basic safety equipment. That I can answer. I personally have zero experience in fundraising, zero, before the war. I didn't realize I was a fundraiser because what I do have contact with the diaspora jury is I work till the war started as a tour guide for incoming tourism, educational tourism. That's with shuls, bar mitzvahs, youth groups, tour groups, individuals. So over the years, I built up a portfolio of people who I've worked with who come back and return. Those are the people I approach. I literally, on grassroots level, approach people who I personally know. And I'm very proud, but also in a strange way, a bit embarrassed to say that as of a month ago, I'd raised 4 million shekels. That's equivalent of, I think, about $1 million or something.
That's over $1 million, yeah.
Just one person. And all of that money, every single red cent has been paid into a C3 that's reached our unit, and it's all for life-saving equipment, nothing else. I'm not talking about fancy barbecues or all this crazy stuff that units have, which is nice, and people do donate the stuff. All the money, every red cent I've raised is now being worn by soldiers in our unit. That's the vest, that's the ceramic plates. I can tell you how much all this stuff costs as well. That's the helmet.
How are everything...
Even a night sight device, because we're going in at night and we can't see properly.
How is all the equipment holding up after so many hundreds of days of war?
Well, I got Aleph equipment. I got the best equipment. The stuff they gave us was already in an absolute shambolic state when they got it. We had vests that were literally falling to pieces were given to us. I then went to an Israeli company called Meron Dolphin, which made the vest for the top ADF units, and they're holding up. I mean, they got wear and tear, and unfortunately blood stains on, and sweat stains, and all the stuff which is on our line of work. But they're strong and holding up. The stuff we were originally given wouldn't have lasted for a few months even, in the kind of conditions which it's being used in. Thrown on ambulances and jeeps and treating wounded soldiers would not have lasted at all.
The reason I ask is because specifically with helmets and ceramic plates, they're not intended to be worn every single day for multiple years. The wear and tear that happens and the amount of care you have to take, it's something to be cognizant of. So sometimes people will say, how is this still a problem? Well, if someone wears a helmet and ceramic plates every single day for 650 days, and they're jumping in and out, they're actually actively doing something, inevitably something might get cracked, there might be some damage, you might hit your head on something, and you have to make sure that that the helmet is structurally sound. These are real considerations, and it is, in many cases, the only thing between a lethal incoming fragment or a bullet or whatever it might be and someone's head or their heart and keeping them alive. So we're not talking about something that's peripheral. We're not talking about something that is secondary. We're talking about a fundamental aspect of protecting people's lives. So I just wanted to get that out there about some of the wear and tear that's natural. That's why when you go to police departments, especially in the United States, they're not keeping helmets, even if they're on the shelf, they're not keeping them for over 5 to 7 years. So just the fact that they would give you a helmet from the 70s is patently absurd. What have you seen with equipment in terms of saving lives? You mentioned grazing someone's head. Have you seen any other instances of this equipment really coming into action?
We're in the thick of things. I mean, unfortunately, my unit is very, very busy still. All these days later, 630 days later, I've definitely seen the different ceramic plates have, vests have. I mean, we've people who absolutely 100% lives have been saved. You know, there's an expression in Hebrew, "Mish mitzil nefesh echad miYisrael mitzil olam kulo." These pieces of equipment that are given to us, they really, really do. It's not a buvameiser. They really, really do. And I personally, I have no proof of this. I think one of the reasons you mentioned it briefly, I was going to mention before because we can't go off on a tangent. One of the reasons we were so underfunded was substandard equipment because the state budget, which by the way has no problem with the Air Force. The Air Force have everything that they need. When it comes to the infantry and troops on the ground, I have no proof, but I'd be very surprised if it's not the case. I'd say that a lot of that state budget has been consumed by a segment of the population that does not serve. And we all know we're talking about the elephant in the room here, which is the ultra-Orthodox, which receive hundreds of millions of dollars of state budget purely for political considerations to keep them in this coalition. They're non-Zionist or anti-Zionist, and that's money that should be spent on those who serve and those who contribute to the state of Israel. So I think that's why there's not enough money for this absolutely essential life-saving equipment within Israel, which doesn't mean that it can't come from abroad. The amount of people who call me desperately saying, how can we help? How can we help? We live in diaspora, but Israel's in our hearts and in our souls and our minds. What can we do? So I always have two answers. One is you come to Israel and give a chibuk because Kol Yisrael Chaverim and Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh. We're responsible for each other, we're all family. And the other thing is help in any way you can. If you help financially, right? That's what to say. And then for them to start reading newspaper articles that the IDF doesn't need any equipment, that all the soldiers have got equipment, they're just crybabies, that's just counterintuitive because it's not the actual reality.
Before I let you go here, I want to address one story that came out, and you're on the ground, and who better to talk about this? Is the IDF deliberately targeting civilians that are going to get aid, as is claimed by Haaretz and anonymous whistleblowers?
Okay, so Haaretz, in case anyone does not know, is the Israeli equivalent of the Stürmer. They are literally working against the state of Israel, and I can really say that. You have to read everything which they write as lechatchila, as not true. It's the most unbelievable, we say that some of we're our own worst enemies. In the case of Haaretz, that is the case. It's the most anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel newspaper out there. The only thing we use it for in the army is if we run out of toilet paper. That's really its only use. And it's a newspaper that all enemies love to quote. In distinguished Israeli daily Haaretz, which gets less than 2% of the readerage in Israel, because it's just rubbish. It's like quoting the Hamas. It's like quoting the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is just some Hamas guy putting numbers out of a hat. That's what it is when you quote Haaretz. So I got so heated up, I forgot the question. What was the question?
Oh, the thing is that this soldier, again.
Oh, yes.
Now,
right.
one sec. Wait, one sec. I do want to clarify one thing, though, is that we can get there's a longer discussion about journalism.
One word answer is no, absolutely not.
No. Okay.
I do remember the question. In Hebrew, that is called Pukuda Bilti Chokit Ba'alil, which means a immoral order. There was a whole film about it in the United States called A Few Good Men. If you remember that film from quite a while ago, it's like a courtroom drama with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, a very young Tom Cruise. And they're saying just because you get an order, you don't need to carry it out if it's an immoral order, such as the Malay massacre in the Vietnam War. Israel, there's something called this kind of order, Pukuda Bilti Chokit Ba'alil. If any soldier is ordered to fire on an innocent civilian, the answer is absolutely not. No. I've been serving in the military for decades. I literally went in as a lone soldier in the Gvadi Brigade in my teen years. I'm still in the army now in my 50s. I've never once ever received an order like that, and no order's ever been given like that. Ever.
That is a thorough debunking. Again, I appreciate that answer. I will say that there's a bigger conversation to be had about the journalism in Israel, or I'd say the lack of journalism in a lot of things, because there's a lot of things to be investigated. But we're on a little bit of a time crunch, so we'll get to that a different time.
I have to get back to my duties.
To the family. So anyway, thank you so much for joining. You're out with a new book. Where should people pick it up?
Okay, so my new book is called Jewish Journeys. the First Temple Period. It's published by Corin Publishers. It's the second in a series on Jewish history, which is about the Second Temple Period. And together, both those books, it ties into the military service in the state of Israel today by telling us, da me'ayin ba, to know where we come from. We need to know where we come from to know where we're going to. A strong Jewish identity comes from a strong sense of Jewish understanding of our roots, how deeply rooted we are in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, and how much we have to be proud to be Jews. It's not a burden to be a Jew, but it's an honor and a privilege. And knowing that comes from knowledge of who we are, where we come from, and where we're going to. Because just like the past of our land, the past of our people is in our land, the future of the Jewish people will be played out in the land of Israel as well. So both these books are published by Corin, available in good Jewish bookshops wherever you want, on the Corin website, Westside Judaica, all over the United States. And those are my latest two books, but I am currently writing one which is about at the end of the year to be published by Geffen on my particular unit. And there's an entire section on that book on equipment and how necessary it is to the donated equipment, how helpful that has been in our service.
I look forward to picking it up. Everyone should pick up the other books. Dr. Tuvia Book, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Litraot mi Israel. Bye.